Everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining. I'm Leigh, and I'm going to be presenting on my service term at the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District. And I'm going to be generally talking about building adaptive capacity in the San Joaquin Valley. So as mentioned, I was placed in at the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District, and it exists within the San Joaquin Valley, which is the southernmost part of the Central Valley, and particularly the northern San Joaquin Valley. So Stanislaus County sits on the traditional ancestral lands of the Yokuts, and Stanislaus is actually Stanislaus in Spanish and is named after a member of the tribe. And so the San Joaquin Valley supplies 25% of the nation's food supply, and the population is about 500,000. The county seat is Modesto, and there are 9 incorporated cities. So the San Joaquin Valley is a very complex area that has undergone a lot of landscape scale changes over the years, and some of the key challenges are urban sprawl, habitat fragmentation, industrial agriculture, and water stress, and food insecurity. And so within this matrix of primarily land use that is agricultural, but also urban, and it is becoming increasingly important to preserve what is left of the high quality agricultural land, but also the natural resources that exist. And interestingly, an early finding in my early research of orienting myself to the San Joaquin Valley, there was an American Farmland Trust study that showed that the highest quality farmland with the most reliable water resources is located primarily around cities, where the development from non-farm risk and urban development is highest. So it's really essential to consider how we need to be doing really careful planning and balance population growth and development, along with conservation and agricultural preservation in this area. So as mentioned, I was placed at the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District, and generally, in all, resource conservation districts are a special district and a non-regulatory public agency. So they're locally driven, and all interactions are voluntary with land managers and farmers. So they're really well positioned to have localized and community-based interactions with the local community. So generally, within East NRCD, their programs can be broken down into their agricultural programs, in addition to their community programs. And I was placed within to support their agricultural programs. And although I did a lot of work with the community programs team as well, and that is where some of my richest experiences came from, given the deep community ties and the community-based events that I was able to attend. And so in these pictures, you can see in the top with the meeting, that was one of our strategy meetings in front of our new office site, which is really exciting. And the RCD is in a really transitional time right now, transformational time, where they're going to be renting out this office space, and it is being developed into an education and research center. And that is the early days. It is also kind of a brownfield project where we've been restoring this site that was been heavily neglected, and now it is already. To the right, you could see a hedgerow, and I'll show you pictures later on of, we have garden beds, there's going to be a house, and I'll share later also my plans for the native plant nursery. So also here you could see the irrigation evaluation program in the bottom left, we're taking some distribution uniformity data to see how well water is distributed among the site, different farms, and that's been a really critical area for me to understand given the prevalence of irrigated agriculture in the San Joaquin Valley. Next to that picture, there's that is from a soil sampling day for the Conservation Innovation Grant Program, which is a really unique program that ESTAN leads, where it's a statewide research trials where we voluntarily work with different farms and then implement conservation practices on their land. And as a result, we collect data, and I was cool to be a part of. Next to that is my supervisor, Jeff, doing a little school-based experiment on showing the differences between agricultural practices and water infiltration. And then next to that is the Junior Chef program, which I really enjoyed helping out with and seeing. It's an after-school program where we got to teach children how to work with local produce and cook. And so here are some more pictures of some field work I got to engage in. I really enjoyed working as a SLUES mentor with both the RCD. We have some SLUES programs, but also the Center for Land-Based Learning kind of manages a curriculum for them, and I got to help out on some of those up in the Winters area, in the Sacramento Valley. And then there's my coworker, Andrea, next to a hedgerow that we installed on the farm. And I absolutely love planting. It's one of my favorite activities. So this is wonderful. So my next largest responsibility with the RCD was to support their watershed coordination program. And there was a lot of lessons learned through this, and essentially Stanislaus County is unique because there are 3 different river systems in the county, but there's the Stanislaus River, the Tuolumne River a little more south going through Modesto, and then the San Joaquin River, which water drains from the Sierras and then comes through the valley and then goes into the San Joaquin into the Delta. And so we found that there's a lot of representation on the Tuolumne River already. So my job is kind of to get people connected on the Stanislaus River and on the lower Stanislaus River in particular. And so part of my job evolved into collaborating with a lot of different interesting partners. So we worked with some biological consulting firms, Kramer Fish Sciences, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, CDFW, the Bureau of Reclamation, and the Army Corps of Engineers. And so this has been a very interesting project of bringing together all these stakeholders, and I coordinated different restoration site visits, planning meetings, and the goal is trying to kind of just get everyone talking and coordinating our action and bringing funding together for restoration projects on the Stanislaus River. And currently we have submitted a grant in November for 2 different projects that are targeted at juvenile salmonid habitat restoration. And we're still waiting response from that application, and we're currently working on another one, the riparian stewardship program, the U.S. at the Bureau of Reclamation. And I can't really overstate how valuable these partnerships have been, and a big need has been to engage the community. So a lot of the technical solutions are there, but these partners, these agencies were coming to the RCD wanting to have a deeper engagement on restoration projects. So in the future, we're going to be working towards establishing a watershed working group, engaging local community, essentially having meetings in public where we can discuss different topics, just meet and talk about the watershed and relate on the shared love for the river. And then establish connections through that and develop projects, and along the line develop a watershed management plan through this effort. And then down the line, hopefully establish more easements, permanent preservation sites that could potentially lead into recreation opportunities, which we've seen recently with the Dos Rios Ranch Preserve near the Tuolumne and San Joaquin confluence. It was an easement that has been since turned into a new state park, which is a really inspiring example of what restoration could look like in the San Joaquin Valley. And I also want to share that a lot of this work was some Zoom meetings and coordination, but there was a lot of field visits, and a really special part of living in the San Joaquin Valley, the valley in general, is a lot of, there's a lot of river floats. And so I got to connect with a lot of different people and connect on the river and learn how to read the river. And I was introduced to really key concepts in fluvial geomorphology and reading the river, process-based process-based restoration, and just understanding how restoration can look from a perspective that works with the river and the natural processes. And that's my supervisor and I, Jeff, on a float. And then in the middle, that's JD with the Fish and Wildlife Service. He was a really significant mentor to me in my watershed coordination role. An additional project that I was excited to work on, and I had the creative freedom to develop, was an agroecology and native plant materials program, which kind of outlined the needs and opportunities for restoration in the San Joaquin Valley, and to be housed at the soil center. So this was influenced by the lack of locally available and affordable native plant seed, and as well as the need for widespread restoration using locally adapted ecotypes in the San Joaquin Valley. So here's kind of my outline on the right of all the topics that were included. And generally, the whole premise was one, to have a native plant materials program developed, but also have an aspect that's more research oriented and agroecology focused. That can be later tied into urban land stewardship programs with the RCD, where we're going to be looking more in backyard habitats and urban landscapes. So back to that whole idea of all the habitat fragmentation, these are the kinds of programs that are going to support the local community to be able to have the resources that are affordable to distribute those amongst themselves, and also have be equipped with the ability to grow, save seed, and distribute amongst themselves. And a part of this is going to be a community seed library. Recently, the RCD submitted a grant that with the local seed company and production company, the Great Valley Seed Company, and they're going to be in partnership with the BLM. They're going to be hopefully receiving funding to start developing this at the soil center. An additional project that I worked on was the climate adaptation report, which had the goal of assessing the climate change impacts on the San Joaquin Valley generally, and then formulating strategies to guide on-farm decision making. So generally, some major impacts are in the San Joaquin Valley are going to be reduced chill hours, which can have a lot of vulnerabilities for perennial agroforestry systems and perennial crop and almond systems, where the chill time might be altering flowering and frost, and it poses a lot of risks for farmers, in addition to water scarcity and extreme heat. And so here I have like 3 simple adaptation strategies that I don't have so much time to get into, but they're just reinforcing the idea to manage farms and fields as part of the larger landscape, restoring natural systems and promoting biological diversity, and through that enhancing connectivity on farm and through the valley. And a big part of this diversifying will breed more resilience in the face of uncertain conditions. So in all, I just want to conclude in saying, reflecting that climate adaptation takes many forms, whether that's from the farm scale of common farm planning, conservation planning for soil health and water holding capacity, or whether that's more localized with community-based landscaping and neighborhood scale food systems and native plant systems, mitigating the effects of climate change. And a large takeaway from my service has been recognizing that there is a dire need for an improved social appreciation. It's social focus on conservation, like who is conservation being done for? And oftentimes there are key groups that are, especially with the big houseless populations in California, where there are conversations going on in restoration planning meetings, and the rhetoric around it has been really complex and difficult to listen to when people are kind of blaming and just treating them as a population to be moved. And the same goes for different sort of environmental justice concerns around the valley. So in all, there's a definite need for a deep engagement with the local community and integration of these groups into all levels of decision making. So that's going to take a lot of different, it's going to take a work from a lot of different angles. And overall, regenerative ag cannot really be achieved without mass disruptions to extractive commodity markets and the shift to localized economies with big agriculture and intensified monoculture cropping systems existing within the framework to almond production, mass almond, and different perennial grain crop productions. There needs to be some reconsideration of and localizing of these economies, and it is a really complex area to navigate. And also with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and water scarcity in the valley, there's going to be some land fallowing or retiring of farmland, and this process must be really intentional and coordinated, because we don't just want a bunch of fragmented retired plots, but rather coordinate this so that they are maybe extending from already preserved areas and while minimizing the effects of the farmers who are going to be the vulnerable ones having to be put out of production, and even more so finding ways in which farmers can be on-farm restoration and can occur without having to fallow if possible. So, and essentially, we need more local empowerment, and this is where our CDs and local community organizations come in with free community events, educational opportunities, resource sharing, just learning and connecting opportunities. And finally, process-based restoration is key in this, but also climate adaptive restoration, where we're looking into what future conditions are going to be and trying to mitigate those. And I'll just end it here. And I just want to say I'm really grateful for this experience and the ability to have been able to explore so many beautiful places in this state, and many of which were in the valley at the rivers. And so I thank you for joining me, and thank you to the RCD and GrizzlyCorps for all of the support this year. And I welcome any questions.
Yay, thank you so much, Leigh, for such an informative and insightful overview of your year. And at this time, if any folks have questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to unmute or plug them into the chat. Many congrats from Andrea, Gavin, and Miriam. Thanks to the folks at East Stan for the partnership and for your support of Leigh and the program.
Thank you guys for coming out.
Awesome.